my friend, it's Pat Sloan here, and it is Wednesday, which is the first Wednesday of our Ode to the National Parks, where we are going to sew 9 blocks, what is that? 9 blocks into a sampler. You have the layout, you have the supply list already. It's just a fun, easy sew to, do every week, something to look forward to. Also, I'm doing the Christmas Jolly Bar sampler from the new Christmas Jolly Bar book from the Fat Quarter Shop. And so we will keep both of those on Wednesdays, through the whole way. So that's just the way it is. We'll have 2 of them. Before we do that, it is September 11th, and we look back on the 9/11 that happened and all of the people that we lost during that. And I know a lot of you made quilts for commemorating 9/11 or commemorating somebody that you lost or somebody in your community you might have known that was there. So if you want to share your commemorative quilts today, we would love to see them and honor the memory of those people. So, and all those that helped, all the early responders, the first responders, all the people that were lost trying to help. It was a pretty horrific thing. And so today we honor them, and if you want to share your quilt, we would love to see it. Okay, so let's first talk about the national parks. So this is the supply list. There we go. And the first block, I'm going to show you all the fabrics that I'm going to pick, and then I'll sew it. So I haven't sewn mine yet for the filming, but here is the block. Ta-da! And this I'm calling the master list because each week our block name has something to do with the park system and not necessarily just a park, because that's only 9 parks. So today is the master list, and what I want to do is give you some of the information about the national parks, because there's actually a lot of you that don't realize how large and encompassing the National Park Service is. There are 430 individual units, they call them units, so individual places in the national park system. It is 85 million acres and encompasses 50 states, the District of Columbia, and the U.S. territories. Now, the only state that does not have a national park is, do you know? Delaware. Delaware has yet to designate anything in the state as a national park, and I'm sure that there are people working on that. Parks can change designations, and let me just tell you a little bit about the type of units that there are. One of the things is that a lot of people think they don't misunderstand the national park system, and they think there are only the 63 units called national park, like the Grand Canyon, or Arcadia National Park in Maine. Those are sort of large areas out there in the country, large territory, landmass areas with significance. 63 of them are named that. But then you also have national battlefields, like near me is the Manassas battlefield from the Civil War. You have national historic sites like the Washington Monument. That's the monument. You have the monument. You have other historic sites. You have national seashores. So some of our seashores are actually national parks, like Chincoteague, which is where my niece works. There are national recreation areas. And then there are a handful of these kind of other places, like Wolf Trap, which is a music park here in my area, just up the street, actually right next door to where my dad lives. So sometimes people say, oh, well, my state doesn't have a national park, because you may not have one of those 63 mega parks like a Grand Canyon that has that word park in their name. But there being, how many did I say? 430. There are national parks in every one of your states, and I have some links here today in the description box and at my website, and if you like, you can just go to the national park system and put in your state and see all the parks that are in your state. So here is a picture. A few weeks ago, Greg and I went to probably the closest national park to my house, to our home, which is Great Falls. It's there's a there's a fall and a river, and it's all done with these very old canals there, kind of just before the trains came into servicing. They had canals where they had barges, and they had to dig these canals to get things from like Philadelphia down to Washington, transport goods. And so that was along this route. And so there is the picture of the falls. So what I hope is, if you have never really taken a look at the national parks, that you go ahead and just go to the website, look at your state, look at a couple of states near you, or ones that you normally go and visit. Maybe you have relatives in another state, and so take a look at their state. You know, it's really fun and interesting to see the different types of areas and different types of things that are out there under this huge, huge organization of the United States National Park System. Okay, I am going to make a block with Gratitude and Grace, and I have my original cuts because they're all small, so I'm going to start using those up first before I get into that bigger yardage I showed you the other day. And we have what you might consider a background on our fabric, and then kind of this box, and then the center of the box. So let's take a look. And if you are new to my Block Wednesday patterns, I have just that little write-up, and today I kind of read you the write-up because it was kind of important to what this block is. But then you have directions, just the cutting directions. Your supply list is encompassing for the whole project. Here is not by block. Then I have, okay, that's the rest of the directions, and they're all, come on, they're all, you know, really simple, easy, fun blocks. And then this is the page where people who like to just see a diagram and, you know, sizes. These are the cut sizes, and today our block has all strips and squares. Then I show you how it would look if it was just done in repeat, either with sashing or not sashing. And so here's repeat just side by side, which I think looks pretty cool. And then I give you a coloring page as a bonus. There is no supply list for this, and there never will be, because that takes a lot more time and editing to do, and this is a free thing, so I do not do a supply list for the repeat block. Okay, so what do we have? This is the background that I'm using, and you could use a solid, you could use, you know, like the colors in my line Gratitude and Grace there are some light background based, but they also have just a ton of color on them. And so, you know, they're really not going to be used. I'm not really going to use these as backgrounds per se. I decided that I will use this as my background. And here I'm considering this the background, but it doesn't have to be. You don't even have to have background in this. This could be another color. And so for me, that's what I'm going to do on this block. I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 fabrics, but I'm not going to use the background today. I am going to use 3 other fabrics. And so for whatever fabric line you're working with, like for me, I think the center will be fantastic with this. So let me just put that under here. So if I have this as the center, we're just going to audition to see what things look like. Now in here, there is the orange and the teal and the green. And so I could go a lot of ways. I could decide, well, what if that framing around it was kind of this light, you know, like that. So there would give you a feel for what that framing would look like under there if I did that in orange. What if I did it in green? So they're totally different. This lets you do this without cutting anything, although if you know for sure you're going to use this, absolutely 100%, you've already decided, you could cut your square, and then that makes it just a little bit easier. Now I could go instead and use one of the much darker fabrics as that frame, like this. See, I could do that sort of box around the center with something darker like that. And then if I wanted to use around the outside, what if I could do that green as the outside out here. Let's see if I push that over, right? Okay, so I could do that out here like that. I'm not loving that combo. that's not the combo I want. I'm thinking, what if I do instead, what if I do the plaid? What if I do the plaid on the outside? Oh, bingo. That's what I'm going to go with this block. There are so many options. If you are a blue person, let's see the blue version of this, which I would use the other one here. So if you wanted the block to have a lot of blue, you could do blue like this, and then you could do the plaid like that. So there's a blue version and a green version. See the difference? So cool. And if you didn't want plaid, because I know some people just freak out over plaids, you just get all wound up in the straightness of things. So there, you could do it like this. So that's also so pretty. And here I have that same option. I think I showed that first, right? I can't remember now. But I'm going to go with the green. I think I'm going to go with the green because it's national park. Of course, national park, like I said, has national seashores. It has monuments. There are actually historic homes. The most recent national park that was assigned, like I think in July, is a building in Texas. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. Now, I'm going to sew that first, and then we're going to talk about a second line of fabric I have and thoughts on that. So I want to center this image in the middle of the square, and it is one of those things where it's a process. It's a process. You need to do a little math. But I took my square ruler, and the size that we're cutting is 5.5. And so I know that if I'm going to do 5 by 5, okay, so the size of before without seam allowance is 5 by 5. Half of 5 by 5 is 2.5. So like each of these quadrants is 2.5. So that is 2.5. But then I have the seam allowance. I need half of the seam allowance, so that's another 1/4, because there's 1/4 over here, 1/4 over here. So I need 2.5 plus 1/4 is 2 3/4. So I am going to put 2 3/4. So I come to my ruler. So I'm using one of these sticky notes, these little sticky arrows. I mean, if you have anything that you have that can do that, but I want to be sure that I'm pointing to my spot. So I have 2.5 plus 1/4. You go all the way down to where 2.5 plus 1/4 meet right there. And so that is the spot that I want to have in the center of my piece. And I have to cut this right sides to me. I can't cut it right sides to you. So here is my 2 3/4, 2 3/4. And when I'm cutting, you can see here, right out here, I want to cut 5.5. So here's the 5.5 line on the black dots. So I'm totally good there. So I'll just straighten this just a little bit, and I can just cut on these two sides because I know it's going to be 5.5. So two sides are cut, and then I rotate that. You can use a rotating cutting mat, and then now I cut the other to 5.5 by 5.5. And so this is my flower centered for the middle. Did you look on the edge? Gratitude and grace. Begin each day with a graceful heart. That's on the salvage. So if you're using those for fun things with my fabric line from Benartex. So this is a plaid. Many of you just kind of freak out about plaids. So if you're trying to, printed plaids, they're just what they are, and I don't get too crazy about the lines. But if you want to, what I suggest is that you pull in a bit from the edge. You're going to just have maybe a tiny bit of waste in order to have less let me see if I can get the glare off, or to have less issue for you if you are a person who has to have everything straight. Since these are rectangles, you have a better chance of everything being straight. So I would pull in and just go with a bigger line that I can kind of line up on. It's not going to be perfect, but it'll be, really good. And then I will just cut single layer. Single layer. There's no double layer, because double layer, you don't know what's shifted underneath. They could be totally unaligned. And so for those of you who need them lined up, this is what you do. You just cut single layer. I mean, I made clothing and we use plaids, and it just was never that big of a deal, but I understand some people just have to have everything just so. Okay, so that's what I'm doing. So what I will do then is I will cut my strip and then cut from that straight side again the 2.5. So you basically, with the plaids, I'm cutting like 1 unit at a time, and that way I have the most control over what's going on. All right, so there is the block. So I switched over to the blue-green plaid. Yes. All right, let me sew it up. Here it is. Look at this. And no background fabric at all. It was all different prints from the line, and Gratitude and Grace has only a couple of those lights. I want to show you another thing about the layout and maybe your thought process for what you're doing for these blocks, because 9 blocks is not a lot of blocks. The layout's really obvious as to what's going on so that you can have a little bit of a plan. And so what I'm going to do is I will do as many blocks as I can without the background, and then I will use the background for the long strips, for the top and the bottom on the block here, and then all the way around out here, so that these blocks will have more dense. Here, let's do it this way, because see, here it's the vine, so the flowers in the middle. So there, let me scroll out, so that each of these blocks then will sit, they'll be like jewels. I think that this line has that feel, so that they will sit with white around them, which I think will be just really, really pretty for this particular layout. Now, if I were to do this in that background, then of course it would have above and below it the same fabric. And then what that would make that do is it would make this float. So it would look like that part of the image is going to float. All right, now I do have a second fabric line, and I think this is 9 blocks, right? It's easy, so she said, ha 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 ha. But I'm dying to use this fabric, and this is called Shoreline, and you can still get Shoreline. You can't maybe get yardage of all of the fabrics in it, but there is still bundles. This is a fat 1/8, which is half of a fat 1/4, and there's totally plenty to do a 9 blocks. Totally plenty to do 9 blocks. But what I first want you to see is that there are a lot of lights. I'm going to put all of these taupes in the category of light. And then we have blue, and then here's more lights, green, and then more lights. Oops, that one probably reads more blue. Let's stick it down with the blues. More blues, lights, darker blues, more medium blue rather, lights, and dark blue. So look at these together. Half of this fabric line is light-based backgrounds. And so I think what I'm going to do is take for the blocks, and where might be traditionally thought of as the background, you know where that is now. I will use for those some of the lights, and then for the other, like in this one, these 2 parts, I will use something else. So in here, what do I have that might have, there's a plaid. There's a great plaid that might be good for the center. There's mostly blue, and that taupe, which I'm going to call kind of like the same as a light, and then this handful of green. So for this first block, I don't want any of the green. I'm going to just use the greens a little bit more as accents, see how they work in. I don't know, maybe they won't even work in. And so there's a really beautiful floral, but I could come over here to these higher contrast florals, like this. What if I did the taupe in the middle, like that? And then the background for that one, see, here it is in white, but But I kind of like, let's just do the taupe for the first one. And then the background, maybe for this one, maybe I'll use some of this with the green as the background. And then the, oh, what about that? The stripe. Gotta love that stripe. Of course, I'm gonna like use, there's two stripes. There's the two stripes. Yeah. Oh, nice. There's also sort of like a dot. Do you see the, you can see the dot? So there's a dot too, but yeah. So the stripe, and I'm gonna pull the green from here and pull it to the outside, so I get that little bit of green starting in here. Okay, I'll sew that one up. And a tip, these are cut 2 inches wide. These guys here, don't cut them 2.5, cut them 2, like it says 2. Those are 2 inches wide. Out here, they're wider. So just be mindful of that. Here is the block done in Shoreline. Look at that. That's right. Actually, this comes in green as well, which I started thinking like that's not quite the same green as the pears, but I already got a binding for the pears, so that's okay. I'm going to use what I have. So here's the two. Here's Gratitude and Grace and Shoreline. Totally different looking. I'm going to use a lot of these whites as what you would think of as the background for the block, and then they'll float them on a white on white from one of my fabric lines. And then Gratitude and Grace. Look at this, the rich colors. Love it. And I don't want to forget to tell you that my buddy Kendall over at his YouTube channel, he's my friend. He's also helps here at the YouTube chat and over in the Facebook group, especially in the evening since he's in Australia. But he sews along on his channel for Block Wednesday. He also does his own sew-alongs and some of my other ones. But on Block Wednesday, he will be sewing the block and showing you kind of the step-by-step if you like to watch that. And he's funny. You'll enjoy going over there and hanging out with him. So be sure you check out his channel. Link is in the description box and the pinned comment here, Kendall Taylor. All right, today is also the kickoff of the the Jolly Bar Books Christmas quilt along. And it's a fast-paced quilt along. There's a lot of blocks to do each week, so I know some of you are doing that one. And you might not have your book yet. I don't have my physical book yet, although they did send me a digital, which is not available to you. They sent me a working digital copy so that I could do blocks in advance. And let me show you, because what we're going to do, because I still have one more important thing. I'm going to show you the blocks, and then tomorrow's video, Thursday, I'll talk about the process of the Jolly Bar, where things are, go through it in more detail. But today, let me just show you the 4. You have to do 4 blocks. 4 blocks for this sampler. So here are 2 of them, and in the book, these are quilts from the book, you know, like a whole quilt of these ornaments, you know, and stars, and then we have a tree and a present. So these, if you're doing the sampler, you have 4 of these blocks to do this week. You have the whole week to do them. And they're simple. They're really simple. But tomorrow we'll go into that one so that you can see how you're supposed, because it's one of those deals again where you have the book, but we're taking just a piece of it from the book, and I'll show you how that's laid out. Okay, so my last fun thing for you is my friends at Aliso Iron have a 15% discount for you and you and you off of almost all of their irons. It excludes the Tula Pink ones. Other than that, all the colors of the minis, the mats, the wool mats that they have, 15% off, the carriers for the big iron and the little iron, all of that 15% off through the end of September, this entire month, from today until the end of the month. So I'm going to be talking about it more often. I will point out the other items. I'll show them to you on different days, but I just wanted to get that out there so that you can get yourself a fabulous Aliso iron. All right, my friend, I hope that you really enjoy making the Ode to the National Park and whatever kind of fabrics you are using. So I love you. Mwah. Thank you for being here in the Sloan Zone. I will see you online.